The Broken Boy. Story made by Kookie Monster. Please enjoy.
My name is Alexis, and I've never been anyone worth remembering. As a child, I was the one people would point and laugh at. I was the fat, awkward boy who couldn't run without panting or lift anything heavier than a basket of fruit. I wasn't strong. I wasn't handsome. I wasn't anything special. And I sure as hell wasn't what anyone wanted to be around. But there was one person who never made me feel invisible. Her name was Lyra. Lyra wasn't like the other kids. She had been born with only one good eye. The other had been scarred beyond use when she was a baby, leaving her with a strange, haunting gaze that made people uncomfortable. The other kids called her the Half-Eye Devil and would make fun of her whenever they could. But unlike me, she never let it break her. She was quiet, her movements often slow and careful, but she was always there when I needed someone. I remember how she would sit next to me on the old stone wall by the village square. No one ever sat with me, but Lyra always did. She would always tell me that things would get better.
I think you're smarter than everyone gives you credit for, Alexis.
She'd say with that half smile of hers.
The world's cruel, but you don't have to be.
I didn't really know what to say to that, but her words stayed with me, like a small spark in the darkness. I didn't have much hope back then, but Lyra made the darkness a little easier to bear. We would sit by the stone wall every day until we turned 13. Life wasn't the greatest, but I've enjoyed every moment I had with her. But then everything changed when the king's soldiers came. They had come to every village, demanding that each one send their strongest, healthiest men to war. It didn't matter who you were, how old you were, or how much you had to live for. If you were a man, you were a soldier. The village council gathered and decided I would be the one to go. They didn't want to send their own sons to fight, and they knew I wouldn't be missed. I was the easiest target, the weakest, the one everyone overlooked. I didn't know what to feel when they told me. There was no fight, no argument. They didn't care about my fear or hesitation. I was just a pawn, a sacrifice to keep their own children safe. My cries didn't matter. I was weak. I was fat. I wasn't fit for war. But I was sent anyway. The night before I left, Lyra gave me a small hand-carved charm. It was a simple thing. Just a small wooden bird with a piece of string tied around it. She put it in my hand and looked me in the eyes.
Please, stay strong and promise me you'll come back. Don't give up.
She said softly. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. I clutched the charm close to my chest as I was sent away. The last time I saw her, she was running after my wagon, tears streaming down her face as I returned those tears with my own. But my tears didn't last long. Before I knew it, I was thrust into combat. I remember the day the war started like it was yesterday. I was thrown into it without warning, without preparation. At first, I didn't even know how to react. I was terrified. I couldn't understand what I was doing there, why I was fighting, or what I was even fighting for. The soldiers mocked me, calling me names I didn't even know the meaning of. They pushed me to the front lines, told me to die if I couldn't fight. I was afraid. But in the middle of it all, I heard her voice.
Please, stay strong and promise me you'll come back. Don't give up.
Her words were the only thing that kept me alive. I clung to them like a lifeline in a storm. Each time I stumbled, each time I thought about giving up, I heard her voice again, in the back of my mind, pushing me forward. Over time, I stopped being the weak boy who couldn't carry his own weight. I grew, I trained, I fought, and I became something I never thought I could be. I became strong. I was no longer the useless kid. I became a general, the one who led battles, the one who struck fear into the hearts of enemies. But none of it mattered. None of it meant anything if I couldn't come back to her. Then, one day, it was over. The war ended, and I could finally go home.
Before I could return, I had to visit the kingdom and meet with the king. On my way there, I passed through my hometown village. I couldn't resist stopping by, if only for a moment, before continuing on. With my army, I returned home, hoping to find something, anything, maybe some sense of belonging. Maybe I could return to the village and find that things had changed, that I wasn't the discarded child anymore. But when I came back to the village, everything felt wrong. They greeted me with smiles, but I saw through them. They wanted to be close to me now, to be my friend, to act as if everything had been forgotten. They wanted me to forget what they had done, how they had sacrificed me for their own safety. But I couldn't forget. I couldn't pretend that everything was okay. But that didn't matter. I was searching for one person, the one person who had never abandoned me, Lyra. She wasn't at the village square where everybody gathered. She wasn't by the old stone wall where we shared our quiet moments together either. I asked the villagers where she was, and their answers were all vague.
Oh, she's around,
They'd say, avoiding my gaze.
She'll be back soon.
I checked the places we used to meet. The stone wall, the old market street, her house, but she wasn't there. Then, when I had nowhere left to look, I remembered one last place, the graveyard. I had hoped she wasn't there. I had prayed that the village would have cared for her, but when I arrived at the graveyard, my heart sank. Lyra's tombstone was there, but it was in ruins, destroyed, torn apart as if it had been left to decay on purpose. The stone was cracked. The flowers that should have been placed there were gone, replaced by dirt and neglect. The marker was barely legible. It was as if the village had erased her from existence, as if they had never cared for her, not even after her death. I kneeled beside her grave, my hands trembling as I ran my fingers over the broken stone. My mind was spinning. She was gone. Then, as I dug deeper, the truth came out. Lyra had not died of some illness or accident. She had been bullied to death. After I left for war, the villagers had turned on her. There was no one left to blame, no one else to target, so they turned to her. They had called her names, pushed her, humiliated her, just like they had done to me all those years ago. But this time, there was no one to stop them. No one to help her. She had died alone, broken, and no one had cared. My breath caught in my throat. My fists clenched so tightly I could feel my nails digging into my palms. The anger inside me was unbearable, suffocating. The village that had discarded me, that had sacrificed me for their own safety, had done the same thing to the only person who ever cared for me. They had tormented her in my absence, and now she was gone. I stood up, trembling with rage. I could feel the power in me, a rage so deep and violent that it burned every inch of my body. I no longer cared about the village. The one thing that had kept me tied to it was gone. I walked back to my men, my soldiers following me like shadows. They didn't ask questions. They didn't need to. They knew who I had become. "Destroy the village," I ordered, my voice low and cold. "Kill them all. Leave nothing standing. No mercy." They didn't hesitate. They knew what it meant to anger me, to betray me. And so, they followed my orders. I stood in the center of the village as it burned. I watched the smoke rise into the sky, and I didn't feel a single ounce of regret. The people who had wronged me, who had betrayed Lyra, were gone. They had paid the price for their cruelty. But as the fire consumed everything, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel like I had won. All I could think about was her, Lyra, the one person who had ever made me feel human. And now, she was gone. I had done what needed to be done. The village was nothing but ash, and with it, the last remnants of my past. It didn't take long for the smoke to reach the kingdom's capital. A traveling merchant had seen the destruction and immediately reported it to the king. News of the village's annihilation spread like wildfire. Soon enough, a message came.
To General Alexis, it has come to my attention that you have laid waste to an entire village. Confirm the accuracy of this report. I need an explanation for this devastation. King Edric II.
I stood there, holding the letter in my hands. The king wanted an explanation? He would get one. I sent my response. To King Edric II, this village, the one you speak of, was filled with corruption and filth. While I was away fighting your war, they murdered my loved ones. They destroyed the only person who ever showed me kindness. A young blind girl named Lyra, full of nothing but kindness, was slaughtered by these savages. I had to do what was necessary. I had to cleanse this kingdom of their wickedness. They deserved no mercy, and I showed them none. General Alexis. There was no more to say. I didn't need to explain myself. I had hoped the king would understand. But not soon after, a second letter came in.
To General Alexis. So, you destroyed an entire village for a blind girl? How laughable. A girl who could barely see, who could do nothing for herself, and you risk everything for her. You must be truly pathetic. She was nothing but a burden, useless, like the rest of them. I have no interest in your foolish attachment to someone who meant nothing in the grand scheme of things. You are a disgrace to the crown, and your actions will not go unpunished. Return to the capital at once, unarmed. I will have you imprisoned, and you will answer for your crimes. King Edric II.
I read the king's response and felt my blood boil. The audacity, the nerve. He had mocked Lyra, the one person who had ever treated me with kindness, the one person who had seen something in me. And he mocked her, belittled her as if she meant nothing. To him, she was just another useless person. But to me, she was everything. I wasn't going to let him get away with this. I wrote my final response. To King Edric II, you mocked my world. Now watch yours burn. Enjoy the crown while you can. Alexis.